Hello everyone, I am back, and since I noticed it was way too hot on the other side of under this porch because there was so much sun on that side, I noticed it was really hard to see the pictures and for you guys to see my screen as well. So I decided to move to the shady part of the patio, and I'll start reading chapter 10 over here because it's easier to see. So if you, I was reading chapter 9, I don't know, yeah, I read chapter 9 today too. I haven't uploaded left yet, I think, but I'll upload it. So let's start reading chapter 10, Fredericksburg. It was December. Soon it was going to be Christmas. Clara Barton stood on the second floor of an old colonial mansion in Falmouth, Virginia, and looked out the window. "I've never seen so much snow in all my life," George told her. George was Clara's driver and helper. He drove Clara with all the supplies she needed from one battlefield to another. "In Massachusetts, where I come from, we have even more snow than here," Clara said with a smile. "Decembers are really cold up there." But Decembers in Massachusetts also had Christmas, family, and presents. Clara thought a little sadly. Christmas was also her birthday. She'd hoped to be in Washington for Christmas and her birthday, but now she wasn't sure that was going to happen. There's going to be a battle here soon, and she would be needed. She looked around her. "Do you think the place is big enough for all these wounded soldiers?" she asked George. "This place? This is a mansion. There are 12 big rooms here, plenty of space." But Clara wasn't sure. She had the feeling that this was going to be a hard battle. That's why she'd brought along 6 army wagons filled with bandages, blankets, and food, not to mention plenty of assistants to help her. She looked around at her old mansion called the Lacey House. For 2 days, she had worked night and day to make a hospital out of it, and now she was ready. She looked out of the window at Rappahannock River, just outside the mansion. "Are you looking at the Confederate soldiers on the other side of the river?" George told her. "Don't look too closely or they might shoot." Clara laughed. "They're a little too far away to do that," she said, but her eyes grew serious. On the other side of the river was Fredericksburg, where 78,000 Confederate soldiers waited. What were the Union soldiers going to do? And then, as if in an answer to a question, she saw a group of Union soldiers running to the river, holding timbers and planks. What were they doing? What are they doing? George wondered aloud. "They're building a bridge across the river so our soldiers can cross to the other side," Clara said excitedly. But every moment shots rang out from, and that sentence is cut. See, as you can see, the picture is way better. But that every moment shots rang out from the Confederate side. "The Confederate soldiers are shooting hard," Clara said then. "They won't let them build the bridge." "Look, George, more Union soldiers are coming. They're putting planks together. We'll have a bridge after all." More shots rang out. Clara could see soldiers fall. "Come on, George," she said, turning away from the river. "We better start working. I have a feeling we're going to be really busy the next few days." Sure enough, they had hardly gone downstairs when soldiers brought in first wounded men. Claire sprang into action. She started big fires in the fireplaces to keep the house warm and heated some water when she poured into a basin, and she brought along as she bent over the soldiers, tending their wounds. But that was just the beginning. Claire's into, and that sentence is cut as well, but she looks really worried in this picture. As you can see her face expression, and look at all of these soldiers right there fighting against each other, trying to build the bridge, but as the Confederate soldiers are shooting. Clara's institution was right. All day, the wounded soldiers poured into Lacey House, Clara Barton's battle hospital. Even as she took care of the wounded, Clara could hear the loud cannon fire and shooting that never stopped. There was hardly time to think. She kept the fires going and made hot soup. She knew that it was very important to keep the wounded soldiers warm, and that was no easy matter when in the middle of harsh winter. Her own fingers are red with cold. But that didn't stop Clara Barton. By the middle of the second day, even George was a little worried. "Are we going to have enough room here for all the wounded?" he asked Clara as he unrolled bandages. "We'll make room," Clara declared. "We won't turn away to anybody." Suddenly, the front door opened, and a soldier rushed in, looking all around him. When he saw Clara, he hurried over to her. "Are you Clara Barton?" he asked her. "I am." "This is for you, Miss Barton," he said, handing over a paper note that was crumpled and bloody. Clara read it quickly. "Who is it from?" George asked her. "It's from Dr. Clarence Cutter," Clara told him. "He's working on the other side of the river. Our soldiers managed to cross the bridge and are fighting at Fredericksburg." "What does he want?" "He says, 'Come to me, your place is here.'" She looked up at George. "He wants me to go to the other side of the river because there are so many wounded soldiers and no one to nurse them there." "The other side of the river? Across that bridge?" George eyes winded. "Do not do that, Miss Barton. The Confederate soldiers are shooting at anyone who crosses the bridge." But Clara had already taken off her apron. "I must go. Our soldiers are fighting on the other side with no one to take care of them. The other nurses can continue my work here. I must go where I am needed." "If you are going," George said, "I'm going too." They packed some supplies as quickly as possible and left the Lacey house. At the river, Clara stopped, looking across. The wooden bridge lay right on the water, spraying in the freezing winds. Shot rang out from the other shore and sprayed the water on both sides. Deep inside, Clara knew this was the most dangerous thing she had ever done. Then she put on one foot on the bridge. It swayed dangerously from side to side. Right over the deep water, shots rang out again, and she could hear the bullets hitting the water all around her. Clara was afraid, but that sentence, she's walking across this river with George right there, and the water looks kind of rough. Yeah. Clara was afraid, but she thought of the Union soldiers who built this bridge. Some of them even died, she thought to herself. The least I can do is cross this bridge they built for me. Soon Clara was walking across the bridge, taking one step after another, slowly and calmly, while the bridge swayed from side to side under her feet. Wind howled, and bullets sprayed the water all around her. George followed bravely right after her. When she approached the opposite shore, a Union officer hurried to help her. He gave her his arm and grasped it. Just as she stepped down, a cannon shell dropped next to them and exploded. Clara looked down. There was now a big hole in her skirts and in the officer's uniform. "This is a warm welcome," Clara said laughingly. "It is indeed, Miss Barton," the officer said, again. Look at that. You could see that little the hole in her clothes. I can't really see the one in the officer's uniform, but yeah, I noticed this the one in Clara's for sure. You could see the little stain coming out. "It is indeed, Miss Barton," the officer said with admiring glances at the brave woman who made the dangerous crossing over the bridge. Clara worked with Dr. Cutter that entire night and all the entire the next day. The Union soldiers were paying a high price for their advance across the bridge. Clara had her arms full every moment, washing wounds and helping Dr. Cutter operate right under the flying bullets, making sure that the soldiers had hot food and enough water. The temperatures were below freezing, and Clara wondered if she would ever get warm again. Finally, she was told to return to Lacey House. When she got back with George, she couldn't believe her eyes. Every foot of space was covered with the wounded. Soldiers were lying on the floors, inside corridors, and even on stair landings. "How many wounded soldiers are in here?" she asked one of her helpers. "About 1,200, he told her. 1,200 men here? Claire was astounded. "All in this house?" "What will we do, Miss Barton?" George asked. "Where would we put them all?" "We must keep the fires going," Clara told him. "The fires are big, but they're not enough. It's freezing. We must keep our soldiers warm. I have an idea. Heat up these bricks and wrap them in soldiers' uniforms." Just then, more soldiers were brought in. "Wait a minute," George said. The soldiers carrying in the wounded stopped in their tracks. These wounded soldiers are wearing gray uniforms, not blue. They're Confederate soldiers, not Union soldiers. We can't treat them." "Why not?" Clara said. "They're risking their lives and getting hurt too. Of course we'll take care of them." "But we have no room," George protested. "We're running out of room even for our own soldiers. Never mind the enemy soldiers. And you're exhausted and cold. You haven't slept a wink in days and haven't eaten either. They may be enemy soldiers, but they're also wounded men," Claire said. "We have room for all wounded soldiers, no matter what color their uniforms are." She looked around her. "I have an idea. Open up that large cupboard." George opened it. "There's nothing inside," he said. "That's the idea," Claire said pleasantly. "Don't you see how large the shelves are? Put some of the wounded soldiers there, and put some wounded soldiers there, and put the others on those other sofas over there. We're going to find room for every single soldier who is hurt, no matter what uniform he wears." For days, Clara worked in Lacey House again. You could see that large cupboard they were talking about, and you can't see any of the colors though, because this book's images are not in color, but you could tell as they are talking that they're talking about this is the Confederate soldier who's wounded, but Clara is still letting him in because she knows that all of the men are wounded and all should get taken care of, because it wouldn't be fair, don't you think? Anne Falmouth taking care of all her soldiers, both Confederate and Union. Her hands were numb with the cold, and she still worked on, never stopping. "Have a cup of hot tea," George suggested to her a number of times, but Clara shook her head. "Time is crucial," she explained. "The quicker the men get treatment for their wounds, the higher the chances of living. I won't stop until all these men have been taken care of." Once, as she bent over one wounded soldier to give him hot tea, he gripped her arm. "Miss Barton," he whispered. Clara patted him gently on his hand. "It's all right. You'll be fine. The doctor says your shoulder is wounded, but you'll recover." But the soldier held her hand tight. "It's not me, Miss Barton. It's my brother, Jimmy. But I'm Henry Butler, but it's about my brother, Jimmy." "What about your brother?" Clara asked him. "Have you seen him, Miss Barton?" Clara stared hard at the pale, weak face. "Was he wounded?" "I don't know, Miss Barton. He was with the army of the James that went to fight in Pennsylvania, and he used to write us letters, but we hadn't heard from him for 6 months. Ma is getting older, and she'd like to know what really happened to Jimmy, but we haven't been able to find out anything." "I thought maybe you knew, Miss Barton." "It sounds like he's missing," Clara said, thinking out loud. This wasn't the first story she'd heard of soldiers who were missing in the war. Nobody knew what had happened to them. She looked at the soldier lying on the floor, his eyes looking straight into hers. Henry, Clara said, when this war is over, I will look for your brother Jimmy. I can't promise you that I'll find him, but at least I'll know what happened to him. Henry Butler smiled and lay back. That's all I ask, Miss Barton, he said. Clara straightened her back and stood up. Even when this war is over, it won't be over, not for many families, nor for Clara herself. There will still be much work to be done. Here's the last picture of today's, oh, no, not today's chapter, well, this chapter. Okay, and that was the end of this chapter. Make sure you like this video and subscribe if you haven't yet. And I hope you enjoyed listening and following along with the chapters, and I will upload more videos soon enough. I hope you're having a nice rest of your day. Bye.